Baruch Hashem, to the 49-day challenge, mamish like a mini Shevuos, like a mini Siras HaOmer, in the midst of Meseches Shevuos, different Shevuos, but nevertheless an incredible opportunity. So you see what you could accomplish over 24 days, you see what you could accomplish over 49 days, and again, before you know it, the person's learned through the entire Shas. And again, Emirat Hashem, B'Shat Tov Mitzlachos, that's the goal we're working towards, and that's the goal every single day that we're just a little bit closer to meeting. So let's begin. Today's daf is daf Hey. We are picking up at the 2 dots Gufa. 2 dots. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines down from the top on Hey Amud Aleph. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Malka and Sammy Esterson, who are dedicating all of the shiurim this month in memory of their parents, Ludwig Stiefel, Yitzchak Leib, and Aaron HaKohen, and Hinda Esterson, Hinda Basenach Ephraim. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an aliyah. Amen. Okay, we'll say let's begin. I just want to, I'll say for a moment, it struck me this morning. Does everybody hear me in the back? I feel maybe as I'm talking in the social hall. No, could I move a little bit further in? Is that okay? I feel like I'm like Michutz Lamachet, like I'm in Galus. Thank you. I was thinking how beautiful it is, Baruch Hashem, that we have a kehila, an extended kehila. I consider this year as the kehila also. Baruch Hashem, we have the ability to do everything in-house. Whether it's a siyum, whether it's a chasana, whatever it is, Baruch Hashem, it's such a schus to be part of something so beautiful where people, when there's a need, people just roll up their sleeves, Baruch Hashem, and make it happen. We should be Zocheh Meretz Hashem to accomplish many great things together in the future. All right, so let's begin. We have a beautiful, beautiful Gemara ahead of us today. Gufa. So remember again, we're going to go back and quote a brisa that we quoted in yesterday's daf. Minayin she'enu chayiv ela al sheish ba yediyah betchila v'yediyah besof. So remember again, Abosai, going back to the Mishnah discussed the idea of yediyos hatuma shtayim shein arba. So remember again, we're talking about the obligation of a carbon olev v'yored. So at what point in time is one chayiv for a carbon olev v'yored? Only if there is yediyah b'tchila, yediyah b'sof, which also means that at one point in time a person realized that they were tamei, and then, so just to give you the chronology, a person realized they were tamei, they had a lapse of awareness. During that lapse of awareness, they either ate something that was consecrated or they entered into the Beis HaMikdash. They did not realize their infraction at the time, but at some point later on, they remembered that they were tamei, and as a result realized that they committed some type of infraction. That's called yediyah b'tchila, yediyah b'sof. As we saw already from the Mishnah, if one lacks yediyah b'tchila, you are out of the parsha of carbon olev v'yored. At that point in time, then it's Yom Kippur, the day itself, and the associated karbanos that are mechaber. So the Brisa said before, Minayin she'enu chayiv ela al sheish ba yediyah b'tchila v'yediyah b'sof. How do we know that one is only chayiv a carbon olev v'yored? If there is tuma awareness at the beginning, meaning when you first become tamei, and tuma awareness at the end. They both say end means sometimes subsequent to the infraction. So the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar, v'ne'elam shnei pam divrei Rabbi Akiva. Because the pasuk says, the word ne'elam, it was hidden, appears twice. Rabbi Akiva darshans from this that again, v'ne'elam, again at the time of the infraction, you forgot about it. After the infraction, you forgot about it, but at some time in the beginning and at some time at the end, you remembered that you were tamei. Rabbi on the other hand says, Eino tzarech, you don't need this drasha v'ne'elam. Why? Hariyu omer v'ne'elam michlal sheyada. Because it will say the lashon itself of v'ne'elam means, and the matter was hidden from him. In order for the matter to be hidden from you, what do you need? You have to have had a moment of awareness. So again, Rebbe says the word v'ne'elam by definition presupposes that at some point in time you knew that you were tamei. Otherwise, it's not v'ne'elam. So therefore, again, in Rebbe's model, so michlal sheyada v'hu yada harikan shtei yediyos. So we'll say, interestingly enough, according to Rebbe, we have one v'ne'elam. So v'ne'elam teaches me that I knew about the tumah, and then it became hidden from me. And then there's another phrase that says v'hu yada. That's harikan shtei yediyos. Therefore, I will say, according to Rebbe, you also have shtei yediyos. So I want to point out, Rebbe and Rabbi Akiva are agreeing in principle onto the halachic mechanics, which are, you have to have yediyah b'tchila and yediyah b'sof. There must have been an awareness at the time you became tamei, and an awareness sometime after the infraction. What are they arguing about? They're arguing about how to learn it out. Rabbi Kiva learns it out from the fact that it says v'ne'elam twice. Rabbi learns it out from the fact that it says v'ne'elam once and v'hu yada a second time. Im kein ma tam lo v'ne'elam. If that's the case, according to Rabbi, what does Rabbi use that second word v'ne'elam for? L'chayiv al ha'elam tuma v'al ha'elam mikdash. Because we'll say Rabbi uses that word to teach us another concept, which is what? That if a person did not realize that the food he was eating was kodesh, or a person did not realize that the space that he was entering in was the Beis HaMikdash, that could also cause responsibility for a carbon ola v'yored. That's what Rabbi ultimately uses the second ne'elam for. Ha'elam tuma, ha'elam mikdash. So says the Gemara. Rabbi say now we're going to darshan this brayso. So Amar Mar, v'ne'elam michlash yadas. Remember again, Rabbi say Rabbi's drasha is predicated on the concept that the word v'ne'elam presupposes that a person must have known that they were tummy at some point. In other words, v'ne'elam means the matter became hidden from him. The matter became hidden. What's the matter that became hidden? So in other words, he knew that he was tamei. He forgot that he was tamei. So Rabbi says, v'ne'elam means once upon a time I knew this piece of information. Subsequently, it became forgotten. My mashma. So Gemara says, I don't understand. How do we dash it from v'ne'elam that he once knew? Amarava midilok siv v'hi aluma mimenu. So this is actually very interesting. Rava says that Rabbi's drasha essentially is like this. If you want to use a lashon that means that he never knew about it before, then the Torah would have said aluma. I will say, what does aluma mean? Aluma means the matter is hidden in its totality. In other words, no one ever knew about this before. So therefore, the fact that the Torah doesn't use the word aluma, but rather the Torah uses the lashon of v'ne'elam, means that what? The matter was known, but was forgotten. Amar Abai says, 1 second. Alame'ata gabe sota dichsiv v'ne'elam me'ene isha. Rabbi said, now listen to this. Who's the sota? Daniel, there are seats. If you need over here, this table over here, there's a seat over here also. So what happens? So again, so Abaye says, well, let's use sota. So when it comes to sota, the pasuk says, "V'ne'elam me'ene isha." It was hidden from the eyes of her husband. Everybody say, so what is this? I'm going to move a little bit further in, right? Distracting. So v'ne'elam me'ene isha. So we'll say, so what happens? So the pasuk says it was hidden from her husband. It was hidden from her husband. Now using Abaye's model, what does v'ne'elam mean? So v'ne'elam means that I knew something and now it's hidden from me. I knew something and then it was forgotten. So 1 second. By sota, also remember, a sota is a woman who's suspected of adultery. What happens? So when the Torah says v'ne'elam me'ene isha, the way we normally understood that pasuk was to mean that her husband had no knowledge of what was happening with her. Now, if you're going to tell me that v'ne'elam means what? That I knew about it and I forgot about it, that's going to be severely problematic in this case. Are you telling me then that the husband knew about his wife's indiscretions from the beginning? If a husband was aware of what his wife was doing, would the water check her? But we learned v'nika ishme avon va'isha tisa savona. The pasuk says, by sota, and the man will be cleansed from his aver, will be free from his. The man will be free from any liability, and the woman will have to bear her sin. So what do we dash in from there? Bisman sha'ish minukime avon. When the man is free from any liability, hamayim bod kines ishto. That's ultimately again when the water checks his wife. But if the man himself is not free from liability, ultimately again the water does not check the woman. So we'll say, if you're going to tell me that the man was aware of what was happening, but yet ultimately didn't do anything about it, then the mesota would not check the wife under those circumstances, in which case we have a definitional issue. Because Abaye, you're telling me that the word v'ne'elam ultimately means what? By the way, it's Abaye in Rebbe, right? You're telling me that at the end of the day, v'ne'elam means I knew and I forgot. So that's fine in this context. But once you're going ahead and going to start applying that definition to other contexts, it's going to become highly problematic. V'su. But we'll say we have another problem, another definitional issue. Gabe Torah d'chsiv. So we'll say over here, Eov. Pasuk in Eov is describing Gabe Torah d'chsiv v'nelma me'inei kol chai u'me'ov hashamayim nistira. So Eov is describing the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the ways of the Torah. That the ways of the Torah are nelma me'inei kol chai. They are hidden from the eyes of all living things. And even the birds of the heavens don't understand the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I'll say here, obviously the point that Eov's trying to make in the context of Eov is that the ways of God are hidden and are mysterious. No living thing knows about them. He says, even Me'of HaShamayim, even from the birds of the sky which fly close to the celestial sphere, even they don't know. So I'll say, so again, remember, Abaye, Rebbe, according to your definition of v'ne'elam, what does v'ne'elam mean? What does v'ne'elam mean? What does it mean? I knew and I forgot. So you're going to tell me then, in this context also, what does it mean? I knew the secrets of Torah and I forgot them. That's obviously not in the context of the pasuk. Vaksiv lo yoda enosh arka. Yet Eov explicitly says, no man knows the value of Torah. No man knows the value of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways. So we have a problem. We have a problem because Rebbe's entire shita is predicated on this concept, ultimately, that what? That v'ne'ela means I knew and I forgot. Yet, again, I both say we see now so far, by the way, there are more examples, but at least two examples over here. Number one, by Sota. Number two, by Torah. Where what? Where the mice of the word v'ne'elam is used, and it does not mean something that I knew about once upon a time, and then ultimately again forgot about, but rather it means something that what? Is never known. So what's going on over here? So we'll say, Abai drops a bomb over here. Mamish, a bomb. A bomb. So you might want to put that in your bagel. I don't want any choking hazards over here. So listen to this. Amr Abaye, get ready for this. Kasava Rebbe holds Yedias Beis Rabo Shma Yedia. So we'll say, this is dramatically amazing. So Abaye says, you have to a little bit adjust as to what we mean by Yediah. So I'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Yedias Beis Rabo. So Rashi says over here, Shalamad bebeis Rabo, Shanogia betumatame, V'hu yada shehergish kishenaga, Avalohis bonin lashum alibo shenitma. So we'll say, listen to this. Sabaye says, in reality, everybody has Yediah. Why does everybody have Yediah? Because everybody learned in yeshiva that if you touch a sheretz, or you touch a dead body, or you're under a roof with a dead body, that what? That you become tameh. That knowledge is part of my consciousness. Unfortunately, sometimes it's pushed to my subconsciousness, but it's always there. Rebbe says that Yediah exists. As such, Rebbe will say, let me just read to you. I thought about maybe making copies of this, but instead I'll just read it to you. So the Ritva has a whole arichos on this. The Ritva has a little bit of a different girsa of Rebbe. So listen to this. Of Rashi. He says, Perish Shalom beis Rabo, Shanogeh b'shartzim tami, v'asr lechol kodesh v'leikanis l'mikdash, v'chol ze yoda kishenaga. So we'll say, listen to this. So Rashi understands that Rebbe's shita is like this. Rebbe's shita is, everybody learned in yeshiva that if you touch something tameh, you become tameh, and as a result, you can't go ahead and eat sacrificial items, and you can't enter into the Beis Hamikdash. V'chol ze yoda kishenaga. I knew all of this when I went ahead and I touched the sheres. Era ella shelo hisbonein lasum al libo shenitma. But rather, I did not consciously think about it at the time I became tameh. So we'll say, hear what's happening over here? According to Rebbe, there's a new definition for Yediah. Yediah means something you know in your subconscious, even though it is not part of your conscious thought process. So since every single child in yeshiva learns that if you touch a sheretz, you touch a dead body, you become tameh. And once you're tameh, you can't go ahead and eat sacrificial or consecrated items, and you can't enter into the Beis Hamikdash. I have Yediah. The fact that I was not consciously aware of that Yediah at the time I went ahead and entered into the Beis Hamikdash, or ate of the consecrated item, does not change the idea that what? That at the end of the day, I had Yediah. So we'll say, so let's go back for a second. We're trying to focus over here on the shita of Rebbe. So Rebbe understands that the word v'ne'elam, by definition, means something that I knew and I forgot. The problem is we see other examples of situations where the word v'ne'elam is used in a way that I never knew about it before. So Rebbe says, Einach inami, that might be true. By Tumah, it's different. Since by Tumah, every single child who went to yeshiva knows these halachas on a basic rudimentary level. I don't mean the complexities of Tumah. I just mean that every single child knows that if you go ahead and you touch a sheretz, you become tummy. Now, both say, obviously, this is talking about a child during times of the Beis HaMikdash, where people in general were much more proficient in the laws of Tumah and Tara. But Lamaisa, again, every single child knows these halachas. Therefore, what? There is an awareness. Therefore, there is a yediyah. At the moment that I went ahead and I ate the consecrated item, or I entered into the Beis HaMikdash, I was not consciously thinking about it. That's okay. It is there, Rabosai, in my subconscious. And once it's there in my subconscious, that is enough to create a biblical yediyah. The Ritva goes on. I'll just quote this to you outside. Maybe I'll post this on the WhatsApp afterwards. So the Ritva goes on. He actually quotes Rabbeinu Chananel. Rabbeinu Chananel goes on and he says, Ki yedias beis rabo, hu sheyada kishenitma mashalamad bebeis rabo, ki anogia b'sharetz tamei tamei, shatame asur likanis lemikdash shalach al kodesh, ela shelo yada gam kishenitma shasheretz hazeh shenagabo hayatamei. The Rabbeinu Chananel's understanding is everybody knows that if you touch a sharetz, you become tamei, and you can't go ahead and eat consecrated items. And if you go ahead and you do so, or you can't go into the basement, if you do so, you're chayiv. Rather, what's the suffix over here? The person over here, the individual in question, did not realize that the sheretz that he touched was in fact one of the tamei shratzim. The bottom line, the Ritva actually has a field day with this. The Ritva then quotes Rabbeinu Tam. He has like 2 pages on this sugya, which I'll post it afterwards. Emir Hashem. Either here or on the Limerick blog. I'm not sure which gets more attention, the WhatsApp or the Limerick blog. Either way, we'll post it in both places. And I will say, but the Yesod is incredible. That according to Rabbi, I understand just the groundbreaking chiddush over here. That Yedias Rabo Shema Yediyah, which Rabbi means that there are things that we learn in our youth that imprint on our neshamas. But in this case, it's not a neshamadik idea, it's a cognitive idea. And therefore, even b'shas maisa, if I'm not consciously aware of it, because I learned it, that in and of itself constitutes a proper din. Now you understand what this means, by the way? Do you understand what this means? Forget about Tumah for just a moment. What Rebbe is introducing to us, Rabbi, is this concept that once you know about things in life, knowledge generates liability. Even if you plead ignorance, b'shas maisa, knowledge generates liability. I will say, deep down, all of us know what's right and what's not right. All of us know what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. But we like to plead ignorance, b'shas maisa. Right? At the moment where the decision has to be made, oh, I forgot, oh, I didn't know, or this. Okay, that's fine. But Rebbe says, if you learned it, you're liable for it. If you were exposed to it, you're liable for it. Even Yedias Beis Rabo, even if something you learned as a child, it was many years ago and I forgot about it. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. It imprinted on your neshama. It imprinted on your soul, and therefore, by definition, I am responsible. Ultimately, again, for that knowledge. So the Gemara says, so if that's the case, we'll also listen to this. So Papa says, if that's the case, so what's Papa says, if that's the case, that according to you, even that which you learned in yeshiva, even that which you learned in cheder, right? Even that which you learned in day school, ultimately goes ahead and creates a yediyah. How do you ever have a case of ein ba yediyah b'tchila? How do you ever have a case of what? Of someone who has no foreknowledge. To which the Gemara says, Amrlei in mishkachas lebetinok shenishpa lebein hanochrim. So we'll say, the truth is, the Gemara gives an extreme example. The extreme example is a child raised by Gentiles. The truth is, in our dar, right, in our dar, we see, you don't even need such a dramatic example. You can have an example of a child who knows nothing, which is a child who was not given the great gift of a Jewish education. The point that Rabbi is trying to make, the point that Rabbi is trying to make, is that Lamaisa, at the end of the day, you can have a situation of someone who has absolutely no exposure. Someone who has no exposure has no awareness. That would be the case of Ein Ba Yediyah B'Tchila. But I must say, it happens to be, by the way, just a fascinating societal statement. What do you see from this exchange over here? What do you see from this exchange? I'm sorry? Everybody went to yeshiva, right? What you do see is that clearly the majority of the population was considered to have a yediyah betchila. Now to be clear, this does not mean that everybody was great Talmidei Chachamim. What it means was, which makes sense, during the times of the Beis HaMikdash, even the common person just had to be versed in the laws of Tumah and Tara. Because if you were not versed, even not well versed, but even just versed, you run the risk of making all types of mistakes. So you see, it's just an incredible societal snapshot. In terms of the Beis HaMikdash, people, general person, had Yediyah. Even if it was just Yediyah based Shabbat, even if it was just some lessons that I learned in Yeshiva, some lessons that I caught a quick shir, but the general person had Yediyah. So we'll say, the bottom line over here is that Rebbe says that's the case. Yediyah betchir we'll say. So the incredible novel interpretation of Rebbe, which I just want to point out, we do not accept halacha l'maisa. But the incredible chiddush of Rebbe is that even Yediyas Beis Rabo, even a Yediyah that I had at the beginning, some exposure from my Rebbe in Yeshiva, that's enough ultimately again to create awareness, which ultimately is enough to create potential liability for a carbon Olav Yoreh. Incredible. So Gemara goes weiter. Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Bosai Aman Heyamad Aleph, second wide line. Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba. So remember, we're going forward. So remember that we had in the Mishnah Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba, two biblically paradigmatic cases which are in reality four. So the Gemara says the following: Tanan Hasam. So let's remember, just to orient ourselves again, the cases of two that are for the biblically paradigmatic cases are cases of transferring an item from Rishos Hayochet to Rishos Harabim. Those are the biblically paradigmatic cases. The other additional to we assume the biblically paradigmatic cases are the case of Hotzah from Rishos Hayochet to private domain to public domain, which would be the cases ultimately again are bringing in from a public domain to a private domain. So it says the Gemara Tanan Hasam. We learn in Masechet Shabbos Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba Bifnim U'Shtayim Shein Arba B'Chutz. So we'll say in Masechet Shabbos it says that there are Yitzios Shtayim, two cases of Hotzah that are really for Bifnim. I will say Bifnim means in Rishos Hayachid, U'Shtayim Shein Arba B'Chutz, which so there are four cases Bifnim, which I will say means cases in Rishos Hayachid, which are there are four cases in Rishos Harabim. Ma'ishna hacha detana Shtayim Shein Arba V'Sulo, U'Ma'ishna hasam detani Shtayim Shein Arba Bifnim, U'Shtayim Shein Arba B'Chutz. I will say, why is it that in our Mishnah here in Masechet Shevuos, all it says by Shabbos is that there are two cases which are for. Yet in Masechet Shabbos it says there are two cases which are for in Rishos Hayachid and two cases which are for in Rishos Harabim. To which the Gemara says that's simple. Hasam de'ikar Shabbosu tani avos v'toldos. Hacha de'la v'ikar Shabbosu avos tani v'toldos lo tani. So we'll say, to which the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbos, where that's the primary discussion about Shabbos, we discuss both avos and toldos. Now, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashi says, what are avos and toldos? Avos are yitzios, shemin ha'toda. So we'll say the avos cases are considered to be the cases of yitzios. Yitzios, we'll say, means cases from Rishos Hayachid to Rishos Harabim. The toldos are hachnosos, bringing in objects from Rishos Harabim to Rishos Hayachid. So in Masechet Shabbos, where the primary discussion is, take a wild guess, Shabbos. So then again, we go into all of the cases. So there are four cases in Rishos Hayachid. There are four cases in Rishos Harabim. We'll say here, where the primary discussion is not Shabbos, it's Shevuos. So also remember again, we said, what's the only reason why the Mishnah brings down? Why does the Mishnah bring down Shabbos at all? Because it's the 2-4 model, right? This is not discussion of Shabbos at all. It's just because Shevuos and Yediyas Atumah, which are juxtaposed next to each other, and they're both carbon Olav Yored, there are two that are 4. So you bring down Shabbos, another case of 2 and 4. But this is not the primary place for this discussion. So essentially, we write it shorthand in the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, Avos Ma'ninu. So we'll say, what are the cases of Avos by Yitzios Shabbos? So Yitzios, both sides, the cases of Avos are cases of Yitzios, where you take an item from Rishos Hayachid to Rishos Harabim. Yitzios Tarti Havyon. So we'll say, are we only saying that there are only 2 cases of Yitzios? So we'll say, in fact, there are more than 2 cases of Yitzios. In other words, we'll say, there are at least 4 cases where that you could construct of an item being taken out from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. So the Gemara is just saying over here, there aren't only two cases, there are much more than two cases. V'chitema mehen l'chiyav or mehen liftar. Maybe you'll say that some of them are liability and some of them are exempt. So take a look at Rashi. Shtayim l'chiyuv. Hotza dani v'hotza dabalabayis. Ushtayim liftar. So maybe we say the following. Maybe there are two cases which should be chayiv. What are the two cases which should be chayiv? Number one, ultimately again, if the ani extends his hand into the Rishus HaYachid and takes something out, or if the balabas takes something out from his home and extends it into Rishus HaRabim, that'll be the cases of chiyuv. Maybe you'll say then there are other cases of p'tur. I will say, without getting into the whole thing over here, Rashi points out, you'll be ma'ayin on this on yourself. Rashi says, in order to be chayev for Hotzah on Shabbos, you need two things. You need the removal of an item from one domain to another. But what else do you need? You need what's called an akira and a hanacha. An uprooting of the object in one domain and a placing it down in another domain. Not only that, but the akira and the hanacha must be performed by who? By who? By the same person. If you have an akira done by one person, a hanacha done by another person, then ultimately, again, that does not generate biblical liability. Rabbinic liability, yes, but biblical liability, no. So the Gemara suggests over here, maybe v'chitema mehen l'chiv mehen liftar. Maybe you'll say that what? That some of the cases mentioned in the Mishnah, meaning when it says shtayim shein arba, maybe it's two cases that ultimately, again, will generate biblical liability. There are four cases, but those additional cases are not biblically liable. They're only rabbinically liable. No. That's not true, because remember, again, the case of Shabbos, all the cases in the Mishnah of the 2-4 model are all juxtaposed one another. Teach me that they're all liable. So ma hasam kulichiyur. We'll say just like in the case of Maros and the Goyim, case of Tzratz, which we're going to discuss next, all of them are chayiv. Avhacha kulu l'chiyuva. So too again, when the Mishnah says shtayim shein arba by Shabbos, these are all four cases that are all liable. Ela amar Papa hasam deikar Shabbos tani chiyuvi upture. So we'll say ultimately again in Masechah Shabbos, where we have shtayim shein arba b'fnim and shtayim shein arba b'chutz. Though the Mishnah there, since the topic is Shabbos, is discussing all of the cases, both of liability as well as of exemptions. Hacha chiyuvi tani upture lo tani. In this case over here, the Mishnah discusses the case of liability, but our Mishnah here, Masechah Shevuos, does not discuss the cases of exemption. So the Gemara says, upture lo tani. So I'm sorry. Hacha chiyuve tani upture lo tani. Chiyuve mainenu. They both say, what are the cases where there's liability by Shabbos? Yitzios. Those will be the cases of Yitzios. So also remember again, the way the Gemara understands Yitzios over here are cases where the object is transferred from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Yitzios tarti havyon. So also the problem is there are only two cases of Yitzios. So the Gemara says Yitzios tarti havyon, davyin shtayim dotza ushtayim dahachnasa. And we'll say that in reality again, there are two cases ultimately again where I'm transferring an item out from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, and there are two additional cases where I'm taking the item from Rishus HaRabim and transferring it into Rishus HaRabim. V'hayitzios katani. But the Mishnah says, we'll say the Gemara is just getting a little bit hung up on the word. The word yitzia, just in a normal sense, normally means what? An item that is being taken out. Normally taken out, we'll say, means from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. There are only two cases like that, not four. Amar Vashi, Tana hachnasa nami hotza karila. Our Tana Rabbosai calls hachnasa an act of taking something out from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, also calls that hotza, yitzia. Mimai, where do we know? So we'll say Amud Beis, Mimai, Disnan, we'll say listen to this. Hamotzi mirishus l'rishus chayiv. If somebody goes in and takes something out from one rishus to another rishus, they're going to be chayiv. Milo askinon tekama ayil iluye. Are we not talking about a case where a person is also bringing something from Rishus HaRabim into Rishus HaYachid? Vikakari le hotza, and yet the Tana still calls it hotza. So the Gemara says, "Dilma kamafik mi Rishus HaYachid Rishus HaRabim." But maybe we're talking about a case of an object that's being taken out from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Im came nisni hamotzi mi Rishus HaYachid Rishus HaRabim. If that's the case, then let the Mishnah say one who takes out an object from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, my mirishus l'rishus. I will say ultimately again, what does it mean when I said mirishus l'rishus? Dafilu mirishus HaRabim l'rishus HaYachid. Ultimately, it means even from the public domain to the private domain. Vikakari le hotza, and it still calls it hotza. So we'll say v'taima mai tan, right? V'taima mai tana kol akiros chayvetz mikomo hotza karile. Because we'll say our tana holds that any time you uproot an item from its place of rest and you transfer it ultimately again to another domain, that is called hotza. That ultimately again is called hotza. Amar Avina masnisan nami deka. Our Mishnah seems to also to play into this as well. There's a dik in the Mishnah. Yitzios Shabbos shtayim shein arba b'fnim u'shtayim shein arba b'chutz v'kamafarish hachnasa. That Rabbi said ultimately again Mishnah says this is what the Mishnah in Shabbos that there are Yitzios Shabbos shtayim shein arba b'fnim are two cases that are really four in Rishus HaYachid and two that are four in Rishus HaRabim, and yet again the Mishnah also includes cases of hachnasa, of ultimately transferring an item from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, shmamina. Indeed, see that this is true. So we'll say, we'll pause here for just a moment. So what's coming out? We'll say all that the Gemara is teaching us now. First of all, two things. Number one, that our Mishnah is shorthand. That if you will contrast this, if you will contrast our Mishnah with the Mishnah in Shabbos, you will see that our Mishnah is written shorthand. Our Mishnah just says Shtayim Shein Arba. Yet again, the Mishnah Masechah Shabbos says Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba B'fnim U'Shtayim Shein Arba B'chutz. And again, I will say the Mishnah Masechah Shabbos is written in an elongated form. Why? Because that's the primary topic. Here, it's just really written shorthand because the Mishnah is just coming to include another case of the Shtayim Shein Arba Mana. But I will say the important takeaway is that at first we thought that the lashon of Yitzia just means what? Yitzia just means Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. The problem that posed for us is there are only two cases of Hotzah from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Yet what does the Mishnah say? Shein Arba. That ultimately, again, there are four cases. So we'll say what the bottom line is that when we say Hotzah, although in the biblically paradigmatic case, the case of Hotzah is what? Taking an item from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, we see that our Tana uses the word Hotzah loosely. And Hotzah means what? Hotzah means what? Going ahead and taking any object from its place of rest in one domain and transferring it to another domain. Therefore, when our Mishnah says Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba, what does it come to Rabbi say? There are two biblically paradigmatic cases. What are the two biblically paradigmatic cases? What are they both say? Transferring an item from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. How does that happen? Either A, remember the paradigmatic case is where the Mishnah Masechah Shabbos sets it up is the balabas, right? The homeowner is giving something to the ani. There are two different ways in which that could occur. In a biblical paradigmatic case, either the ani reaches his hand into Rishus HaYachid, receives the loaf of bread from the balabas, takes it out into the Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, I will say that is biblically problematic. Why? Because again, the ani has done the akira and the hanoch in Rishus HaYachid and ultimately taken onto Rishus HaRabim. The other possibility is where the balabas takes the loaf from his home into the Rishus HaRabim, in which case, again, he is doing the malacha. Shein Arba. I will say, so what are the additional cases? The additional cases would be ultimately where the ani goes ahead, takes his basket from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. We don't have to get into these cases, but the point is the two additional cases is where there's a utzah taking place from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. So the biblically paradigmatic cases is the transfer of an item from private domain to public domain, which yields two additional cases of transfer of an item from public domain to private domain. What's the other important takeaway? The other important takeaway will say that you're only chayiv for Hotzah and Shabbos on what? Unless what? If what? If what? I feel like I have to yell just because of the silly. This was done without my consent. I just want to point that over here. So as I said, the idea over here is there has to be. I understand the executive committee decided there has to be an akira and a hanocha. There has to be an akira and a hanocha for Shabbos. You're only chayiv if one person uproots the item in one domain and places it down in another domain. If akira and hanocha are done by two people, then what? There will not be biblical liability. There still will be rabbinic liability. Also, we'll just end this off by saying Rava Amar Rava says Rishuyos Katani Rishuyos Shtayim Rishuyos Shabbos Shtayim. So we'll say interesting enough, Rava has a different interpretation of the Mishnah. In Rava's interpretation of the Mishnah, he says he understands that Yitzios really means Rishuyos. So he focuses on that the Mishnah is really saying Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim, which means that Lemaisa, again, what? There are two Rishuyos by Shabbos. Rishus Harabim, Rishus Hayochid, which ultimately then yield to 4 different types of cases of liability. Good. Now we go weiter. Maros Negoim Shnaim Shein Arba. What was the next case? The next case was Tzaras. There are two primary. We'll see there are two primary shades of Tzaras, which ultimately yields 4 different shades. We're really going to see it's 4 in total. So the Gemara says, "Fine, Tanan Hasam, Maros the Gaim." So we'll say now, okay, let's follow this closely. Tanan Hasam, we learned there, Maros Negoim Shnaim Shein Arba. So we'll say when it comes to Tzaras, when it comes to the shades of Tzaras, there are Shnaim Shein Arba. There are 2 shades that then yield a total of 4 different colors. What are they? Here we go, we'll say. Now here is going to be the order. Baheres. Number 1, top of the list, is Baheres. What does Baheres look like? Aza Kashelik. It is as white as snow. As white as snow. Shniala. So we'll say, just understand, this is a progression. What's underneath Baheres? Shniala. Kisida Echon. We'll say, interestingly enough, what it seems to be saying over here is that the Tolda of Baheres, the Tolda doesn't have its own name. The offshoot, the secondary category of Baheres doesn't have its own name. It only has a descriptive. It only has a description. What is it? Kesida Hechal. It is as white as the plaster used in the Beis Hamikdash. So it doesn't have a name, it just has the description. So first is Baheres, which is snow white. Then underneath Baheres is Kesida Hechal, is white like plaster. Next, Seis. They must understand what you see over here is something fascinating. Baheres and Seis are both biblical terms. Seis. It seems to be that Seis is underneath. That in the spectrum over here, Seis is number 3. Seis Ketsemer Lavan. Seis is as white as wool. Shniallah, the Tolda of Seis, Kikrum Beitza, is like the membrane of an egg. Like the membrane of an egg. Okay, so I'll say, so what we seem to have in this progression is, number 1, Baheres, snow white. Under that, Sida Heichal, white like the plaster of the Beis HaMikdash. Under that, Seis, which is wool white, right? White is wool. And under that, Kikrum Beitz, like the membrane of an egg. Okay, watch this. Amr Rabbi Chanina, Man Tana Maras Nagayim. We'll say, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Who is our Mishnah? This is amazing. Look, Rabbi Akiva. One thing we know which is clear, which is, it's not Rabbi Akiva. Why? The Rabbi Akiva, this is amazing. You know what's amazing? Whoever thought that Tuma, Hotzah, and Saras could be so riveting? Whoever thought? Right? We go through life thinking that these are like boring topics. Whoever thought that, Mamish, you're ready to like clear the rest every day? Like, I don't want to stop. Like, we can spend all day with Saras. Whoever thought? Man Tana Maras the Gam. So we'll say, ultimately, again, who's the Tana of our Mishnah? We'll say, by the way, I just want to tell you, even if you don't feel it, if you say it enough, you will convince yourself of that reality. I'm just telling you, say it enough, you'll feel it. So Man Tana Maras the Gam, look, Rabbi Akiva. It's not like Rabbi Akiva, why? Kevan the Amar. We'll say, listen to this. Zulam Alamizu. Now we'll say, I just gave you Rabbi Akiva's Shita. Rabbi Akiva is one who says that the way the Mishnah just quoted this is a progression. Zula malamizu. So we'll say, so it is Baheres, Sid, Seis, not Seis, Seis, and Krum Beitza. That's the progression of the 4. So Zula malamizu, Imkain, Taharta, Sid, Heichamilat Saref. So we'll say, listen to this, because why? Because essentially, what you've done is you've precluded the possibility of Sid Heichal. Let's say again, a person has a discoloration that's like the Sid Heichal. It's as white as the plaster of the Beis HaMikdash. So let's say again, one has that. What could it possibly combine with to go ahead and form the rest of the shear? Now take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Imkain, Rashi says, Dehu shena'an, b'lashon avos v'tol, los tiharta, mara hasid mileit sarif, midesanya l'sid shniya l'baheres, v'lo tanya nami shniya l'seis, v'hari av miseis hipachusa. So we'll say, remember again, by tzaras, in order for tzaras to be problematic, there has to be a particular shear. So let's say again, I don't have the requisite shear of sid, but I have, let's say, a couple of discolorations. And if you combine them with each other, they form the requisite shear that's problematic for tzara. So in Rabbi Akiva's model, where he understands that it's a spectrum, it's a continuum, meaning it's avos and toldos. So what would sid combine with? Listen to this. Bahadi ma letzarfe. Letzarfe bahadi baheres. So he'll say, here's the problem. If you want to say that sid should combine together with baheres, here's what I will say. The problem is that it can't work. Why? Because ika se'es da'adifa minei. So I'll say, here's the interesting peculiarity we have. We have the two avos are what? The two avos are baheres and se'es. Baheres has underneath it sid, se'es has underneath it krum beitza. So now let's say I have a little discoloration, ultimately again, of sid. So what does that combine with? What does that combine with? So if you're going to tell me that it should combine with baheres, that doesn't work, and I'll tell you why. Because ika se'es ta'adifa minei. Because they're both saying there is a level above sid, which is what? Which is se'es. Se'es, which is the color of white wool, is still in between sid and baheres. So to say that sid should combine with baheres, that doesn't work because there is a discoloration in between them. So let's sarfe bahadi se'es. So maybe you'll say, okay, so let sid combine with se'es. Why doesn't that work? Lav told the didehu. It can't work. I will say why? Because sid is not the tolda of se'es. So which the Gemara says, okay. So we'll say, what the Gemara is pointing out is, according to Rabbi Akiva, you have this strange issue, which is he quotes it as avos and toldos, but he quotes them as a continuum. So I have baheres, sid, se'es, krum beitza, which then means if I have a little bit of a discoloration of se'es, right? Of sid, what can I combine that with? So my natural reflex is to combine it with what? With its av of baheres. What's the problem? The problem is that's not the next shade. There's an in-between shade, which is what? Se'es. Combining with se'es, I can't do that. Why? Because sid is not the tolda of se'es, it's the tolda of baheres. So I have this technical issue, which is if I have sid, I have a little bit of sid, and let's say another discoloration, I can't combine it with anything else. To which the Gemara says, 1 second. The truth is, this problem is not unique to sid. This same problem exists by what? It exists by krum beitza. Why? So the Gemara says, Ma letzarfe. Letzarfe bahadi se'es. If you want to say that if I have a little discoloration of krum beitza, I should go ahead and combine it with se'es, that won't work. Why? Because ikasid da'adif minei, because I will say there's a shade in between krum beitza and se'es, which is what? Which is sid, which is plaster. Litzarfe bahadi sid. So when you combine it with sid, you can't do that because lav bar minei, they're in two different categories. Because remember, again, sid is the tolda of baheres. Krum beitza is the tolda of se'es. So the Gemara says, lav bar minehu, top of vava medalif. So the Gemara says, hi mai. So what do I do with this? Bishlama below sid heichal krum beitza lo kasha. So the reality is, without the discussion of sid, so krum beitza wouldn't be a question. Ta'afagav the krum beitza mitasoi the se'es, because we'll say even though krum beitza ultimately again is a secondary category to se'es, Rachmana Amar ula se'es ula sapachas. Sapachas tfelo le se'es, because they both say when it comes to se'es, that's easier because the Torah already groups together se'es and sapachas, which tells you that a se'es and a sapachas, we'll get into sapachas. Sapachas is another type of discoloration that they combine. And they combine sapachas tfela se'es. So sapachas is a lesser color than a se'es. Afagav dimenachta minei. Even though what? Even though ultimately again the whiteness of sapachas is way below se'es, nevertheless, what? They combine. Now, both say what that tells you is something amazing, dramatically amazing. Remember, se'es is the av. The fact that the Torah says se'es and sapachas tells you that if you have a se'es, that se'es could combine with its other toldos, even though what? They're much less white than the av. So, by krum beitza, we're good. Why? Because krum beitza is the tolda to what Rabbi say? is a tolda to se'es. Se'es already, that av has the unique ability to combine with its toldos, even though its toldos are much less white than the av. The av agav de menachas minei tuva, el se'id heichal kasha. Rabbi say, so therefore, krum beitza doesn't really pose such a kasha. Our kasha, Rabbi say, is with what? It is with sid heichal. If Rabbi say, what's our kasha? Here it's a fundamental kasha. A person has a discoloration that is the color of sid. I keep saying sid. Sid, the plaster of the Beis Hamikdash, that whiteness. What does it combine with? So we'll say, now it's most tempting, let's go through this again. It's most tempting to say, it's very exciting. What does it combine with? What should it combine with? What should it combine with? I want to say something. You have to know this stuff, and I'll tell you why. After 120, there's an entrance exam into the Beis Hamikdash, not the Beis Hamikdash, Beis Hamikdash Shamal and Olam Haba. Olam Haba. I say, so the great chap is you don't know what's on the exam. You don't know what's there, and it could be it's just one question for an eternal bliss, and it might be Shevuos Hamid Beis. It might be Shevuos Hamid Beis. Listen, I just have one question for you. Just tell me, at the end of the day, what is the Talda for Baharas? That might be it. That might be the only question. That's what stands between me and eternity, mitachas kisei hakavod. And I don't want any of you pointing fingers at me. Right? It was Silber. Silber wasn't clear. No, I want to go on record. I'm being clear over here. So we'll say. So what do we have over here? So remember, we have two toldos, two primary categories of tzara'as. We have what's called baheres and we have seis. Baheres has a tolda that the Mishnah is calling sid. Sid is just a description. It is the coloration. It is the color of the plaster of the Beis Hamikdash. And there is seis. Seis has its tolda of krum beitza. So now let's take care of the second part first. If I have krum beitza, it could combine with seis, even though again there are many shades of white apart. I know it wasn't good English. Many shades of white, whatever. You understand what I mean. I'll say why? Because when it comes to seis, the Torah says l'seis u'l'sapachas. The fact that seis sapachas says that a seis could come out with the sapachas. What does sapachas represent? Sapachas essentially represents any tolda of seis. So even though krum beitza is many shades off, ultimately again from seis, they can still combine with one another. That's fine. The problem we have, Rabbi is with baheres. So I have baheres. It has a tolda of sid. Does sid combine with baheres? So here's the problem. There are many shades, not many, but there are a few shades in between baheres and sid. So can sid ultimately, again, go ahead and combine with baheres? That's the fundamental shaila. Because to say that it should combine, well, it's not the next shade over. Because remember, again, what's between baheres and sid? What's between seis? So that's the fundamental shaila. Our Mishnah, which seems to read, or the Mishnah quoted over here, which seems to indicate, again, that it's a spectrum, what would sid combine with? To which the Gemara says, you're right. Ella mechavarta masnisin delo Rabbi Akiva. I will say, after all that, the Gemara says, you're right. It would appear that ultimately, again, this Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Akiva, because at the end of the day, with Rabbi Akiva, we'd have an issue ultimately with trying to figure out what sid ultimately would combine with. Okay, so we'll stop over here for today. Emir Hashem. We'll pick up right here tomorrow.
Don't forget to pay. We have a minion, yeah?